This is a group summary of The Starfish and the Spider, The Unstoppable Power of Leaderless Organizations. It was written by Ori Braffman and Rod Beckstrom. Essentially, this book is about what happens when organizations work together without defined leaders or managers to answer to. In chapter 1, they start out by discussing a lawsuit between large record labels, primarily MGM, in 2005. These large record labels were suing music sharing organizations such as similar to Napster and eMule and Kazaa. They were suing these companies because they were stealing their music and the music companies were losing money. Well, the reason why they had so much trouble in fighting these companies is that the more that companies like MGM and the music giants attacked these decentralized organizations, they became stronger and more decentralized. They then went on to compare in the book these decentralized organizations to the Apache Indians. Back in the 1600s, the Apache Indians were attacked by the Spanish. The Spanish had already in the 1500s defeated the Aztecs and the Incas. They were able to do so because these organizations were centralized, a lot like a lot of your corporations. They had a leader at the top and people who followed. Once you take out that leader, then the rest will follow. Much like a company, you have a CEO and a large board of directors. And if you take out that leader, then the rest of the company will fail. Well, the Apaches were not like any of these other organizations. They didn't have any central leader. They had Nantons, which were spiritual leaders that would help guide them and give guidance in various areas, but they weren't necessary for the civilization to continue on. If they took out one of the Nantons, another one would appear. But no one answered to any central leader. This made it hard for the Spanish to defeat the Apaches for this reason, because they had nothing to take from them. They had no person to go to destroy their civilization. The same thing held true with the music companies against these media sharing organizations. As they went through attacking and suing these companies, there was nobody to take away. It was people just like the rest of us who were using all this music, and they couldn't attack every single one of them to shut them down. So they continued to grow stronger. This then brought up the first major principle of decentralization, that when attacked, a decentralized organization tends to become more open and more decentralized. In chapter 2, they went to discuss the spider, the starfish, and what's called the president of the internet. Basically in 1995, Dave Garrison, who was then the CEO of Netcom, one of the early internet service providers, was meeting with some potential French investors because they were needing more money for Netcom. In all of these meetings, the French kept asking who was the president of the internet, and he kept trying to explain to them that there wasn't, that the internet was essentially a network of networks. There wasn't one single thing to look to, and the French just couldn't get it. And so he finally went to them and said, look, I'm the president of the internet. Let's just keep going so that we can get all this sorted out. Well, in this case, the book basically says that the French mistook the starfish for the spider. And what that means is when you look at a spider, it's got 8 legs, it's got a central body with those legs coming off of it. And the body and the legs are all run by the head, by the brain. You can cut off a leg or you can take off some eyes, but the spider itself will continue. If you take off the head, the spider will not. Again, like a lot of your major corporations. You can take off a department here, or you can shut down one of these groups over here, but as long as that CEO is intact, in theory, the company is going to continue. If you take that CEO or that head of the organization away, it's going to shut down. Well, then comparing that to a starfish again has a central body with legs or arms coming off of it, but that's kind of where the similarities stop. The starfish, each arm of the starfish is its own entity. You can literally cut a starfish in half, and then you end up with 2 starfish. It will grow from the other halves. You can cut off a leg, it will regenerate that leg. So the starfish as a whole is not dependent on all of the legs of the starfish itself. That then brought to the second principle, which we've kind of already stated, that it's easy to mistake starfish for spiders. And even more so, the third principle of decentralization, that an open system doesn't have central intelligence, that the intelligence is spread throughout. And again, that goes back to that central body of the starfish isn't where everything lies. It's all throughout the entire organization, so to speak, of the of the starfish. Basic questions that can be asked to identify whether an organization is a starfish, whether it's decentralized or whether it's a spider that is centralized, are: is there a person in charge? Are there headquarters? If you thump it on the head, will it die? Is there a clear division of roles? If you take out a unit, is the organization itself harmed? Are knowledge and power concentrated, or are they distributed throughout? Is the organization flexible, or is it rigid? Can you count the employees or participants? Are working groups funded by the organization, or are they self-funding? Do they take care of themselves? And do working groups communicate directly or through intermediaries? All of these questions, if you look at them and if you look at a decentralized organization versus a centralized organization, you'll see that all of these are complete opposites and that there are definable answers for each. That basically is where you go to identify how these organizations operate.
Hi, I'm Shauna, and I will speak with you on chapters 3 and 4 of The Starfish and the Spider. As David previously mentioned, the book speaks about decentralized organizations and the fact that there is not a head to the organization or a leader per se. Since there's no one specifically in charge of the site or the system that is being used, the people that access the system or the site take over and become what they call the community of the site, meaning they will police the sites. They will make sure that there's no misinformation as far as their knowledge base is. There's no derogatory information on there. If the derogatory information is on the site, they do remove those things to keep from offending others who may log into the site and want to see exactly what's going on. The community will also add existing information to what's already posted in order to bring more detail or to be more specific if something may be perceived as vague. When you go into chapter 4, it goes into the legs of a decentralized organization. And there's 5 legs of a decentralized organization, and even if one of those legs may be cut off, the organization still can run. The 5 legs are the circle, and that means everybody within that circle is equal. Then the next leg is the catalyst. That person initiates the circle, and then he or she fades away and goes into the background. And they lead by example, but they're in the background while they're leading. The next leg is ideology, and it holds the group together. It's just like glue. It keeps them linked, even though there's not a head. The next one is the pre-existing network. Everything comes from a platform, and this is the organization platform because it's pre-existing. You have to have a platform in order to be able to build at that point. The final leg is the champion. They're adamant about promoting new ideas, and they will take things to the next level. This person is a people person, and could also be deemed as a salesperson.
Hi, my name is Matt, and I'm talking about chapter 5 in this book. Shauna just went over the 5 legs of decentralization. Chapter 5 goes in detail explaining what's called the catalyst, which is the second leg of the 5. Catalysts are very interested in helping people. They really want to know what the best way to make the next great thing for that person come about instead of worrying about themselves. A catalyst is someone who always thinks, how can I help this person? How can they be better because of me? I want to make this person better. I want to take what their traits are and expose them and help them. The catalysts never ever think about what's in it for them. They're always concerned about what's in it for the other person. They're very unselfish, very selfless. We also find that all catalysts have similar tools that they use. The biggest and most relevant of these tools is that catalysts want the next great thing, again, for the person they're speaking with, and catalysts absolutely thrive. They thrive on meeting new people every day. Like Shauna said, they love to lead by example, but then they like to be silent and go in the back and kind of, they don't want to be around, and they want everyone to know that that person that they've helped is great in their own way. Catalysts are truly essential to teamwork, and with any great organization that wants to be and remain successful, you have to have a catalyst. You have to have teamwork, and that's what's important with these organizations. The catalyst does provide the organization decentralization, the second leg. Again, the catalyst will start the organization and then take on the role of constant cheerleader, but they cannot take on too much of the role, so it won't become actually all about them. David talked earlier about the fact that in any organization you have the CEO, and if you take out a unit, is that organization harmed at all? Catalysts understand that, and they understand how to equalize that enough to stay in the back to not be harmed and to not take away too much focus. They understand this is important, but also that if the catalyst is too much of a cheerleader and cheers too much, organization can become about the CEO, not the or the CEO or the catalyst, and not the actual company and not the goal. We do find that every organization needs a true dedicated catalyst.
Hi, my name is Leah, and I'll be going over Chapter 6. The main idea of this chapter is how to take on decentralized starfish organizations. It talks about some old ways and then some new strategies as well. The biggest example that they gave throughout the chapter is the government versus the Al-Qaeda. Some old ways that they used were fighting like they were as if the Al-Qaeda were centralized. For example, they went after Osama bin Laden, and though this may have been effective for organized crime, it doesn't work for the same in a decentralized organization. The idea was that they would get the leader, and though he would be replaced, the following leaders would be less capable, and this trend would continue until finally they were defeated. The problem with this is that in starfish organizations, that if you cut off one part, more will grow and actually may be stronger rather than weaker. The good news is, though, that they can be beaten, and there are 3 new strategies that they have put into place. One is changing the ideology. The theory here is that since going after the leader or part of the organization only encourages them and strengthens them, you have to go after their ideology. Their ideology is what is driving the organization to do what they do. Attacking this ideology, if done correctly and not making them defensive, could bring them down if they no longer stand for the same ideology. The second strategy is to centralize them. This theory is about affecting them in some way to where one group is over the others. Basically giving the organization reason to create a hierarchy and a power structure. With a hierarchy, the organization becomes centralized and is easier to take on and to be controlled. The third strategy is to centralize yourself. This strategy is being used even now in certain countries to take on the Al-Qaeda. The idea of this strategy is to take on decentralized organizations by becoming decentralized ourselves. Since people know their own communities best and could tell you where these circles of the Al-Qaeda are, why not create our own circles of people from their own communities to find their circles and take them on?
Hi, my name's Brittany, and I'll be talking about Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. The more a network grows, the more useful it becomes, and the more likely it is for its users to stay put. Useful is defined by how many other web pages point to a page, how much traffic the page receives, and how many users click on the page link when it shows up in Google search. Google's architecture is fundamentally based on user input. This search algorithm works by scanning billions of web pages to receive sites that other people have found the most useful. Chapter 8 talks about in the search of a sweet spot. The decentralized sweet spot is the point along the centralized and decentralized continuum that yields the best competitive position. In a way, finding the sweet spot is like Goldilocks eating various bowls of porridge. Some's too hot, some's too cold, some's just right. For example, compared with eBay, Craigslist was too decentralized because it allows everyone to post. It didn't offer any user ratings. This site wasn't conductive on the sale of the ratings and the purchase of expensive items, at least not in sight unseen. But eBay managed to strike the balance between the spider and the starfish organizations. User ratings for eBay create the combination of trust and security.
Alright, I'm Tay, and I'm going to be speaking on Chapter 9, The New World. It's basically a summary of what my group has talked about so far. Most organizations in today's society are becoming more decentralized. Um, this is basically more of a lateral power instead of having management of a hierarchy where you have a CEO, a couple big wigs, and a flood of employees under. This lateral power evens out this management. There'll be a lot more managers controlling fewer employees. This is good because it gives the employees more power and more independence. Knowledge is often at the fringe of the organization, so the people, bottom line, working with the products have more input and can really send that knowledge upwards. It's easier because it's less people to go through to get there. Toyota uses this a lot because they use their assembly line workers that are actually hands-on with the product to make innovations and make these crucial decisions. Also, a good point about decentralization is that the managers are the catalyst. I know we spoke on the catalyst earlier, and the catalysts really just are able to make their own decisions. They're really good for an organization because they make their own decisions and they don't have to go through the CEO. They can make these critical decisions without having to go to a higher power. They're able to just make the decisions right there and keep the organization moving along. The last point I'm going to talk on is the network effect. The network effect is crucial with all these corporations because it's cheaper now. The Starfish organization really can take advantage of this because it's cheap and used to cost billions to really network the way that we're able to network now. Like Skype and Craigslist, it costs nothing to add new customers. eBay uses this a lot also, and each employee or each customer really adds on to the value of the industry because if someone was to sign on, they have stuff to sell and they have stuff to buy. So each customer is really adding a lot of value.